PTE Talks là chuỗi tọa đàm trực tuyến nằm trong khuôn khổ hợp tác giữa Viện ISB, Đại học Kinh tế Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh với Pearson, PTE Academic và Báo VnExpress. Bắt đầu từ ngày 1 tháng 7 năm 2022, quy tụ 10 diễn giả là các chuyên gia về PTE tại Pearson, các nhà quản lý giáo dục tại đại học top 1% thế giới, và các thí sinh đạt điểm cao trong kỳ thi PTE Academic. 4 chủ đề mới nhất về PTE và tiếng Anh du học. PTE mở rộng cánh cửa du học đại học top 1% thế giới, công nghệ mới trong dạy học và khảo thí tiếng Anh, chiến lược chinh phục kỳ thi PTE, kinh nghiệm thực chiến kỳ thi PTE. Chuỗi tọa đàm giúp các bạn có cái nhìn rõ hơn về tầm quan trọng của kỳ thi PTE khi xét tuyển vào đại học hàng đầu thế giới, hiểu rõ về ứng dụng công nghệ AI trong khảo thí tiếng Anh quốc tế và chiến thuật luyện thi PTE hiệu quả. Đăng ký tham dự chuỗi tọa đàm PTE Talks nhé! Xin được chào đón quý vị độc giả đang theo dõi chuỗi tọa đàm PTE Talks nằm trong khuôn khổ hợp tác giữa Viện ISB, Đại học Kinh tế Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh (UEH), Pearson, cơ quan chủ thể của kỳ thi PTE, và Báo VnExpress. Sự kiện quy tụ các chuyên gia về PTE, các nhà quản lý giáo dục tại đại học top 1% thế giới cùng với các thí sinh đạt điểm cao trong kỳ thi PTE Academic. Thưa quý vị, chắc hẳn những loại bằng cấp và chứng chỉ tiếng Anh đã không còn quá xa lạ với các bạn học sinh, sinh viên Việt Nam. Và mỗi bài kiểm tra để lấy các loại bằng chứng chỉ tiếng Anh sẽ có những tiêu chí đánh giá và mức độ ưu tiên riêng ở từng nơi. Tuy nhiên, có thể khẳng định được tầm quan trọng của các chứng chỉ này trong việc tạo cơ sở đánh giá trình độ, kỹ năng tiếng Anh của người học, cũng như tạo điều kiện giúp học sinh, sinh viên có nhiều cơ hội đi du học tại các quốc gia nói tiếng Anh. Và trong chuỗi tọa đàm này, chúng ta sẽ cùng tìm hiểu kỹ hơn về một loại chứng chỉ đã và đang khá phổ biến ở nhiều quốc gia trên thế giới và đang được ngày càng nhiều bạn trẻ Việt Nam quan tâm trong lộ trình chuẩn bị cho hành trang du học của mình, đó chính là PTE Academic. Để hiểu rõ hơn về kỳ thi PTE cũng như sự khác biệt của PTE với những bài kiểm tra tiếng Anh phổ biến khác, chúng ta sẽ cùng trò chuyện với những vị khách mời đặc biệt. Ngay sau đây, xin mời quý vị cùng đón xem video giới thiệu các vị diễn giả sẽ xuất hiện trong buổi tọa đàm ngày hôm nay.
Giáo sư Yi-Chen Lan, Phó Hiệu trưởng phụ trách phát triển toàn cầu Đại học Western Sydney. Ông có bằng cử nhân thương mại danh dự và bằng tiến sĩ của Đại học Western Sydney, Australia. Tháng 5 năm 2014, ông được Đại học Kinh tế Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh trao bằng tiến sĩ kinh tế danh dự vì những đóng góp đối với việc phát triển giáo dục quốc tế tại Việt Nam. Ông có 5 năm kinh nghiệm làm quản lý cấp cao trong lĩnh vực hệ thống thông tin và đảm bảo chất lượng cho các tổ chức đa quốc gia, hơn 20 năm kinh nghiệm giảng dạy các khóa học về phát triển hệ thống thông tin và quản lý, tiếp thị kinh doanh điện tử toàn cầu, quản lý môi trường và quản lý dự án cả bậc đại học và sau đại học. Ông Matthew Lamkin, Giám đốc quan hệ chính phủ và hợp tác quốc tế châu Á Pearson, PTE Academic, với hơn 15 năm kinh nghiệm trong lĩnh vực giáo dục quốc tế, làm việc và hợp tác với các cơ quan chính phủ, các trường đại học, các cơ sở giáo dục và hiệp hội nghề nghiệp trong việc khảo thí tiếng Anh quốc tế nhằm hỗ trợ sinh viên có nguyện vọng tiếp cận với các cơ hội học tập trên khắp thế giới. Ông có nhiều năm kinh nghiệm giảng dạy tiếng Anh tại các quốc gia châu Á.
Hello, Yi-Chen and Matthew. Thank you for being here with us today. Now, from the intro video, we can see the important roles that you two are having at your organizations. However, I'm also curious about the journey that brought you to where you are right now. Could you share with us more about that journey of yours, please? Yi-Chen?
Sure. Thank you. I'm very happy to speak today. I'm Professor Yi-Chen Lan, Vice Chancellor Global Development and Provost of Western Sydney University's Vietnam campus. And my journey started from 1994 when I was an international student from Taiwan to study in Australia at Western Sydney University. So you can see nearly 30 years. I'm here grow up with the same university and started from a student to become an academic, now the executive in the university. And that means, I have full understanding of how international students feel when they study in a different country. And I can provide different comments and my experiences that to new international students arrived in Australia.
Wow, cool. It's good to see what a meritocracy society Australia it's like an Australia dream instead of American dream, right? And you certainly have a lot of insights as an international student yourself. Thank you, Yi-Chen. And Matthew?
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having this opportunity, and it's great to do it with Yi-Chen at Western Sydney University as well. So really looking forward to this chat. I've been involved in international education for about 15 years now. I started off as an English teacher in South Korea. I've spent quite a lot of time in Asia. I'm very fortunate in that regards. And as some of you may be able to tell from my accent, I may be based in Australia, but I'm actually British. So I started working for this company called Pearson back in the UK. And then our English test, PTE Academic, was approved for all visa purposes by the Australian government in 2014. And that gave me the opportunity to migrate to Australia. So I'm obviously from an English-speaking background, so I didn't have to go through the English testing part of it, but I did go through the migrant journey part. And actually my wife as well is South Korean. So both of us have done this journey, and we've been living in Australia now very happily for the last 8 years, and now have a family. So coming to Australia has been very nice for me personally, and very happy that professionally with my role, I'm responsible for PTE Academic across Southeast Asia, Korea, and Japan. It was 2019 the last time I was in Vietnam, so I really miss visiting actually. That's been difficult over the last couple of years, but I'm hoping within the next 2 months I'll be back, and very much looking forward to that. Thank you.
Amazing. Could you also share with us what is so extracting from working with Pearson's?
Oh, what I like about working with Pearson, it's a company I'd recommend actually to anyone. It's a very big global company. We have people in more than 50 countries around the world. There's 23,000 people. We work with a range of educational technologies, assessments, learning resources for students and teachers of all ages. So I also find, for me personally, it's provided me with a lot of opportunities, and it's a very good company that supports your own development and learning.
Right, Yi-Chen, well, the first question for you. So University of top 1% globally, that's the focus of today's interest in the audience. How can students get in, and what are the required entry requirements?
Of course. Let's say Western Sydney University has been the top 250 places in the world. That accounts for 1%, top 1% globally. And the students, obviously, especially coming from different countries, they would like to study in the top university in the world. So I understand that there are many international students coming to study Western Sydney University, but I noticed that Vietnamese students are smart, diligent, and hardworking. I have no doubt of their academic performance and the experiences. And it comes down to the English, the language proficiency. This is very important. So I do see, a good English level will excel the students in their academic study. And in Western Sydney University, similar to other top universities in Australia, in the whole world, that we do require English as one of the entry criteria into our study. And just give you an example, we have PTE as one of the English tests that accepted by the university. And we required the total number of total score of 58 for most of the degree programs entries. And there are some degree programs require higher PTE scores like 65, for example, nursing programs, medicine programs, because these are the programs that require to have a high level of English for students to communicate directly with the native English speakers. So in any case, the English requirement is the key to the success of international students study in Australia and of course in Western Sydney University. And at the moment, the university accepts 3 internationally recognized English test programs, and PTE is obviously one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Yi-Chen. It's interesting. PTE is certainly a new name to some of our audience here, but it is an official test beside IELTS and TOEFL to get into top university. So Matthew, could you share with us more about PTE? Like what is it, how does it work, what skill does it test, and importantly, what's the difference between IELTS and PTE?
Yep, absolutely. I think first of all, just picking up on your first point about not everybody having heard of PTE, some of the other tests you mentioned, they've been around for 30 or 40 years. PTE, just over 10 years old. So we were the baby of the testing world, but like all babies, it's grown very quickly. And as well as Western Sydney University, it's accepted by all universities in Australia and New Zealand, as well as for all visa categories. 99% of universities in the UK, as well as all visa categories there as well. In the US, more than 2,000 institutions. So we've got many of the Ivy League, such as Harvard Business School, Yale, Princeton, Columbia University, for example. And in Canada, more than 90% of institutions. So what we think now is that we give Vietnamese students a lot of choice. So if they're able to take PTE Academic, it opens a lot of doors for them around the world or within Asia. People take PTE Academic to study at an Asian university often as well. So I think now we've got this approval in place. It provides a lot more opportunities for students in Vietnam that take the test. In terms of what the key points of PTE are, it's a computer-based test, and you do the reading, writing, speaking, and listening in 1 2-hour session on computer at one of our test centers. So you're wearing a headset for the speaking, for example. We like to have relatively small testing rooms, quite a personal environment. So you're not all in a classroom listening to the same tape. It's your own private test. Everyone within a test center, each does a different test. So when you finished with a question, you press next and you move on to the next question. So a very personal experience there. You can book a test as little as 24 hours if there's a session available and get the results typically within about 2 days. So it is very fast in order to complete an application. But in terms of what really makes it different, it was built on 4 key principles. To be as accurate as we could make it, and we give students a score in a very granular score scale known as the Global Scale of English. And as Yi-Chen mentioned, you may need a 65, for example, if you're studying nursing at Western Sydney University. Also to be more relevant to life and study in an English-speaking environment. And that reflects the international environment at somewhere like Western Sydney. The third element, to be more objective to life, study in an English-speaking environment, and we don't use any voice actors. All of the content is real. If you're listening to a lecture, it's a real professor delivering that. And we do these using our automated scoring system. So we're the only test used for visa purposes that is assessed fully using an automated scoring system, and it allows us to be incredibly objective. It doesn't take into account irrelevant factors such as appearance, for example, just looking at your English. And also to be more secure. If you're an institution wanting to accept PTE, you want to know that the results are valid. And we, of course, have many security measures from palm vein scanning, CCTV invigilation. These are sort of in the background. The students aren't aware that these are going on, but for a university or a government, they need to know that the scores are genuine. So we have a lot of security measures in place as well.
Wow, impressive. So it's an English test that is assessed by AI. not a human being.
Yep.
Well,
that's correct. That's
impressive.
years of research and development into the AI. That's what most of the focus has been on. It's quite a sophisticated scoring system.
Right. Thank you, Matthew. So it's a very impressive test with AI assessment. So, well, at first, when students took the test, they will face some certainty, right? Like when they face with anything new. So, Yi-Chen, do you have any student who already took the test, the PTE test, and have any comments about it? Can you share with us?
Yes, of course. Actually, there are more and more students wanting to study in Western Sydney universities getting the PTE test as their English testing tools to enter into the university. And I did speak to some of our students who have taken PTE tests, and first impression they told me is that they feel a bit less stress in preparing and taking the tests. They told me that the English test under PTE is more realistic. They see that the conversation, they listening, they understand the test better. And also, of course, earlier Matthew did mention that the result is actually coming very quickly as what the AI assessment, AI marking. And of course, that has a big algorithm and also big data behind the machine to actually evaluate it. This is a good point I wanted to mention, that it is not subjective. That's why AI is there for. It treated every student is the same and evaluated students more real scores. They're reflecting their English proficiency. So all in all, our students who have taken PTE test, they are very satisfied with the experience.
Wow, it's good to hear positive feedback from students who actually took the test. And so do you have, like, looking at the bigger picture, do you have a figure or an observation on the trend of students who switched from IELTS to PT, or who actually took the PT test at Western Sydney University?
Basically, I don't have the exact number of students have taken PTE test. However, I can tell you they are increasing number, significant increased number year by year for students that taking PTE as their English tests. So I'm very confident that students, they see this is another test that will get them into the university, and I really expect more students to take the PTE test for the entry requirement. Thank you.
Right. And how about the global picture? Can you observe from Pearson, Matthew?
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's nice to hear the positive comments from Yi-Chen, the feedback from students. And that's something that we try to listen to and gather as much as possible, to hear what people think of the test as we go through. Over the last few years, things have developed quite quickly for us. We've gone from delivering our test in 56 countries to more than 115. And our operations team did that during the COVID pandemic, so full credit to them on this. We're now also delivering our test across all ASEAN member states, of which, of course, Vietnam is a leading member of. So we're very pleased to be able to do that. Globally, we're, I'd say, about testing 25% more people in 2022 than we were in 2019, so pre-pandemic, to do a bit of a fair comparison. And in Vietnam, that's even more. It's more than 4 times as many people as in 2019. And we are testing 6 sessions a day, actually, in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, with further test centres in new locations planned as well to help students access the test. We also have an online version of PTE Academic, which students can take at home, which isn't used for visa purposes. But if you're applying for a university to study abroad, you're able to take it. And we know that the reason people take PTE, we ask them whenever anyone books a test, how did you hear of the test? Was it recommended by a university, by an education agent? Was it Pearson's marketing? And what most people put was friend or family referred them. So going back to Yi-Chen's point about the feedback, that's actually what's helping with the growth, actually. So that's very positive from our perspective.
Right, thank you, Matthew and Yi-Chen, for your insights and comments and observation on the test. Now let's move on to the next section. Well, Matthew and Yi-Chen, now that we know that PT is an official English test to get into universities, but I'm wondering that is it just that? Does PT help an international student beyond the entrance to university, to the life that they will face to accepted into university? Okay, so the first question to Yi-Chen is, out of my curiosity, what's the reality of university experience abroad that usually make even students with high English test scores will struggle at first?
Yes, this is a very good question. You have a high English score doesn't mean that you fully understand in the class as an international student in a different language environment. Especially in Australia, it's an English-speaking country. However, Australia is a multicultural country. Best minds, professors, there are professional staff in the university. Actually, many of them coming from different cultural backgrounds. And that means, they have different, even though they speak in English, they have variety of accents. And that's the reality for the students, international students, or even domestic students sitting in a classroom environment. So it is very important that for international students who gain English test with a high score, but they also need to train their ears to understand different accents. As more diverse accents that you listen, you are more capable of getting your ears understanding and receiving all these kind of accents, accepting these accents and gaining the knowledge. Because remember, English is a tool. It's not for study purposes unless you are studying English major. I would say 95% of students studying different disciplines all across various areas, and they use English as their learning tool. So you need to understand, that means you need to train your ears from diverse accents from professors. So this is very important part of the learning experience. And that as I previously mentioned, that some students who have taken PTE tests, they told me that PTE tests they use real characters with diverse accents in their tests. This is really good first step for students to understand they are in the global environment, and therefore it's easier transition from their home countries to English-speaking countries like in Australia. And not only that, international students are not just about studying. They also need to immerse themselves in the local cultures. They need to communicate with their peer students or their communities. So this is very important to also have their ears been trained in the different accents to be able to enjoy their living in Australia. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with those sentiments. I think the expression "training your ears," I think, is absolutely right. From a testing perspective, we can make the test as fair as we possibly can do. And as Yi-Chen correctly points out, you may listen to accents from different countries. On PTE, they're not designed to be strongly regional, but it reflects somewhere like Western Sydney University, where you may have professors or friends from all over the world. So our test is designed to be accurate international English. But I think to pick up on what Yi-Chen mentioned is what happens before and after your test that's so crucial as well. Preparing for an English test and taking it, that's such a small part of your journey. All that learning English up to it, training your ears, is crucial. When I used to teach English, my students were very used to listening to American accents, so their listening range was so narrow. And me being from the UK, at first they didn't understand what I was saying. But over time, if you learn English, then your listening range does really stretch and gets very big. And then after the test, join clubs in Australia, make friends with people from different nationalities, take advantage of all those options. I think some people think as soon as they've got their English test and enroll in a university, it's finished. They don't need to learn English anymore. Whereas I think of it, now the fun part of learning English actually begins. This is where you can use it. You can make friends. You can socialize with other people and have fun. So don't just go in a share house with other people of the same nationality and talk your own language. Spread out. Make Australian friends from other parts of Asia. And that's actually the fun part of learning a language, really. So definitely take advantage of that.
I couldn't agree more. But I could attest to what you two been sharing. When I was in university back then, I struggled at first with the various accents and the speed of my lecturer and the best mind, like they are from India or and other places as well. So when I was in Vietnam preparing for an IELTS test, I was not acquainted with that accent and that kind of speech. And when I was in university, I was in ISAC, an international student organization, and my senior, my boss, is from Africa, and it's just like you said, the fun started from there, right? And what I really appreciate in PTE, it took real life, like the listening pieces, the real lecturer and real talking from real people. So there's no voice actor like what you said before. That really helps. Yeah, I think so.
That's it. And I think you don't have to be an expert on all accents in order to take the test. I mean, it's certainly not too strongly regional, but it means that you don't have to speak like me to get a high score. Basically, one of the questions is listen and repeat sentence, and you don't have to copy the accent. I mean, you can with the intonation, the words, but yeah, it's about it being realistic and usable, really.
Yeah, right. And Yi-Chen, is there any more aspects of the international student life that they might struggle at first?
What I couldn't agree more about immerse yourself in the local communities as an international student and in a classroom as well. I wanted to highlight that typically Asian students, they are a bit nervous in the classroom. They didn't want to engage. And most of the time, because they are so busy trying to capture the lecturers, the professors talking about the class content. So once you have, trained your ears, you would have, be more comfortable. And in fact, that will change your aptitude in the classrooms. Instead, you could have more engagement and responsive in the classroom, and perhaps asking questions or challenging the informations given by the lecturers is 100% accurate. So this is what we wanted to see the students coming from different countries to study in Australia, to engage in the classroom, to communicate, to speak out, to express your opinion, because international students are very important in the learning environment in Australia. Although we are multi-cultural societies, most of Australian students, domestic students, they second or third generations migrants. However, they living in Australia. They grown up in Australia. They need their peer students from outside of Australia to inject their global experiences in the classroom. So conversation is the most important, I believe, communication, and obviously the English is an important element in this. And reflecting back to PTE, which is a small part at the beginning part of the study abroad journey, but that gives a very good starting point. If the students can go through that, they understand this is only just the beginning, and they can take it further for their studies abroad and living in the different countries like in Australia.
Yeah.
And I've always found as well Australian universities very supportive of students. They support diversity, they support international students speaking up, and as Yi-Chen correctly pointed out, the other international students and the Australian students will benefit from hearing the opinions and thoughts of Vietnamese students and sharing them. It's not as if you speak up and other people think, oh, well, what's he saying? It's a supportive environment. So yeah, immerse yourself and feel free to express that.
Yeah, I think Yi-Chen raised a very important point of being active in discussion in class. Thinking back to my time abroad, I also could see the importance of it. But the skills that we need, like the ability to think on the spot and then to respond immediately, is very important. Sometimes it goes against my innate nature, like to think very carefully, to choose the word carefully, to make sure that everything I speak out is perfect before it's coming out of my mouth. So I have to go against all of that. And I'm very curious to know that the fluency of idea and the fluency of speaking, is that reflected in the PTE test? Matthew?
Yep, fluency is an important aspect, I think, of any English test. One aspect of determining your ability at a language is how can you react to a verbal or a written prompt within a given time frame, and that relates to your fluency. So a few questions we use to test this. There's one where you have to read aloud, reading a short paragraph out loud. And one of the aspects that we look into for this is fluency. So it is an important aspect, but I think a point I want to make on this is sometimes people can overthink the way they approach a specific question. The way people prepare for many English tests is to try and think about technique too much. What do I have to show to get a high score? And if you have to prepare a lot by focusing on technique, it's probably not a good test. So I would suggest approaching the questions by not overthinking them. Don't worry too much about what skills you need to show and just concentrate on the question itself. Most of your preparation for passing an English test has nothing to do with that English test. It's about learning those skills. And as you're learning English, you will learn fluency. That's one of the aspects that your English teachers will help you improve. And then the English test itself if you've got good fluency, it'll be reflected on your score. So the preparing for a test is a relatively short part just before the test, once you've learnt English, so that you're familiar with the actual test and know what to expect. So fluency is important. There are a number of other important aspects as well. So yeah, don't overthink certain elements, I think, is the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. And also another point I would like to bring up is the in PTE, like I really like how PTE approach and bring the material from student life or from other aspects of university into the questions, like recruitment or understanding about learning methods or understanding about university structures and courses, etc. Yeah, so I think for a student who have a dream of studying abroad, but not yet set their foot on that country, but to have all those knowledge and ideas presented to them in the test that they have to prepare for, is a good way to prepare them for the journey ahead as well. So that is another point that I really appreciate in PTE. So let's come to the other section. Through our discussion so far, we can see that PTE is a popular test and it is very good one to prepare a student for a study abroad journey. And I can see that PTE is popular in many countries. However, in PTE is not a very familiar English test in Vietnam. And I believe that after your sharings about PTE today, lots of Vietnamese students and audience are very curious about this test. So could you share more about how they can study for and take the test? Well, maybe in Vietnam first.
Yeah, I think an important thing that any student in Vietnam should bear in mind is that they have a choice when it comes to that English testing. Obviously, I work for PTE, so I'm not impartial. I can tell you all of the ways in which PTE is wonderful. But I think the benefit now is that you have a choice. There's a range of different English testing options available. So the first thing I recommend is to get to know them. Having a choice means you now have the power as the student to go for the option that best suits your application and that suits yourself. So definitely take advantage of that. I think that's the main message I want to resonate with yourselves. In terms of PTE, to get to know it, you can visit our website, pearsonpte.com. You can watch our YouTube clips, get an introduction of each type of question. We have a range of resources to help you prepare. We have scored online practice tests, which are exactly the same as a real test. You can take it at home. You get the results in about 20 minutes. There is a cost for that because it's scored using our same AI in about 20 minutes. We also have books that people can use to prepare. So a range of options there. And we also have our test centers available in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, testing 6 days a week. So you just book a test on our website. It just takes a few minutes.
Right, thank you, Matthew. How about students who are already in Australia? Like say they study a foundation course at Western Sydney University. What are their choices and options?
And of course, Western Sydney University is also has an authorized PTE test center in Western Sydney University's Sydney Olympic Park campus. So the students can also book it online and do the test. We, as well, just like in Vietnam, we open 6 days a week. And every day there are a number of test slots that you can pick and choose to suit your time. So it's all online booking available for students. And apart from the test, that I actually personally went to the test center to look at the facility, which is really fantastic. Like Matthew mentioned it right at the beginning. It's individualized environment. So you are very comfortable because you are the person who control the pace of the test. So this is really fantastic. And apart from the test itself, Western Sydney University also provides, as authorized by PTE, for the preparation course. And this course is basically run 2 Saturday mornings. I believe it's about a couple of hours, 3 hours each day for this preparation course. So you can see the preparation for PTE tests is not as difficult or as long as other preparation for other English tests, because I can see, as from our students' experience, you just act nature, not really studying for the English test. You just need to be familiarized with the testing format and so on, and you will be ready. And I'm sure Vietnamese students can get through the test very straightforward and receive high scores. Thank you.
From what I heard from a friend who was in Australia last year, like almost every test centers in Australia was fully booked, and we can see the same phenomenon happen here right now in Vietnam as well. Am I right, Matthew?
Yes, the test has got very popular in both countries and others as well. In Vietnam, at the moment as we speak, the waiting time has got up a little bit longer. So if anyone needs to take a test right now, I do apologize for that. We are working on getting extra sessions and also expanding to other cities. So I hope that doesn't inconvenience anybody, but we are getting more sessions, and in Australia as well. The test has been very popular for some time. If your application doesn't require a visa, you may be able to apply to the university using PTE Academic online, which is exactly the same as the test center PTE Academic, except you can take it at home or anywhere that's got a suitable internet connection, and if you've got the suitable equipment to do so. That isn't used for visa purposes, but if you just need a test for entering a university, that could be an option for you. So there's that as well. But yeah, and just picking up on the familiarization point, I think that's absolutely the perfect word Yi-Chen mentioned. It's not about learning techniques to pass an English test. That's not what you should be doing. When your English is good enough, you want to familiarize yourself so you know what to expect, know how the screen looks, know how it moves through, understand the style of questions. So then when you're in the test, you feel relaxed and confident. And that's really what it's about. It's not about overthinking a particular question. Right, do they want to see fluency? Do they want to know my grammar? What do they want from me? There's the question, attempt to answer it. So, and the range of preparation options we have, there's online courses available. As Yi-Chen mentioned, if you're in Australia, Western Sydney have their course. There are other courses in Vietnam, and there's also self-study preparation materials that people can find on the website. So there are a few different options to suit your circumstances.
Yeah, and I hope that you have new test centers open up very soon in Vietnam as well, because I don't know about others, but for me, it's very easy to understand the hype about taking PTE, because after the first time I took it, I got quite addicted to taking it.
That's a very strange addiction you have to English tests.
It's because the interaction with the test, like there's no human involved, with just taking it with a computer, and then the convenient, the fast way it's processed and it gives me a score. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, my students, when I used to teach, would feel a bit intimidated when they have a test from an examiner. Sometimes it feels a bit a bit imposing, and I noticed my students, their ability to speak used to shrink because they were nervous. So I hope that with it being on computer, you're in your own booth with partitions, and having that personal environment helps people to relax and just focus on it. And an important point, I think, with our availability, the waiting time in Vietnam was just 24 hours for a test. At the moment, it's got up to a few weeks, which I know may be normal for some tests, but we want it to be shorter again. So we're working on bringing down that waiting time so that it's just a matter of days again. So this is just a temporary thing caused by sudden popularity.
Thank you, Matthew and Yi-Chen, so much for a very interesting talk and very informative as well. I myself already learned a lot of insights from PTE, the tests, and also the reality of studying abroad, as well as the requirement from university. Thank you again, and I wish you to have a great day. See you. Bye bye.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thưa các bạn, PTE đang ngày càng phổ biến và thể hiện được tính ưu việt, giúp cho người học có thể thực sự được trải nghiệm tiếng Anh một cách tự nhiên, thoải mái và hiệu quả nhất. Và đến đây thì thời lượng của buổi trò chuyện cũng đã hết rồi. Một lần nữa chúng tôi xin cảm ơn các vị khách mời đã dành thời gian tham gia chương trình ngày hôm nay. Và xin cảm ơn quý vị đã quan tâm theo dõi tập đầu tiên của PTE Talks. Hy vọng rằng những thông tin mà chúng tôi đã đem lại trong chuỗi chương trình này đã cung cấp những thông tin bổ ích giúp cho quý độc giả và đặc biệt là các bạn trẻ đang có quan tâm tới PTE sẽ phần nào hiểu hơn về kỳ thi này. Và một lần nữa xin cảm ơn, xin chào và hẹn gặp lại quý vị độc giả trong những chương trình lần sau.